Okay, so hello everyone. Let's see, Jess, are you here today? Are you here right now?
Yes, I am. Hello, Miranda. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you? I was just wondering, did you want to say hi to the class so they know who you are or no? I realize I just
Sure.
put you on the spot.
No, you're fine. Hi, everyone. My name's Jess. I am the program manager for the Frisk Center for Autism and Innovation, who Miranda is very wonderfully hosting this program, but it's a Frisk Center program. My main hat is I'm a doctoral candidate in astrophysics here at Vanderbilt, but I actually live in Hawaii. And Miranda is a good friend of mine, and you're in good hands. And I'm also more than happy to help out in the chat and stuff. I code in Python all the time for work. So if anyone has any questions about coding and also coding for astrophysics, I'm your person. I'm not as good as Miranda. She is a proper coder. The astronomy people tend to just make pretty plots and not do much else. So
There's a lot of value in that though. Yeah, Jess is awesome, everyone. So definitely.
My plots are very pretty. I do have pretty plots. But I can't play with big data and organize it in as appropriate way as Miranda. Don't try and get me to git anything. But yeah, so I'm here if you need me to help to support Miranda in this. And if any of the YouTube videos go up late, that's my fault because that's my responsibility. And if tonight's up a bit late, I'm flying to Albuquerque from Hawaii, so I might be a bit late, but I will do it.
Yeah, we can be very forgiving for Jess. Also, Jess, I just realized I tried to make you co-host and accidentally just made you host, and now I have no host permissions whatsoever.
Sure.
So can you make
hold on. Good at coding, not good at Zoom, apparently.
Yeah,
I don't even know how to begin to fix this.
I have a balance of skills.
Hold on, let me find you, participants.
Okay.
Yeah, suddenly I have all the information. Okay. Make host. There you go. Change host.
Okay, am I the host now?
You can make me co-host.
I am. Okay, now I'm gonna make you co-host. Sorry, everyone. We're still working out, these Zoom things. All right, now I'm gonna share my screen again. Okay, and then instead, see, I'll just have to figure this out. I only see a button to say make host, not co-host. So I don't know how to do that.
I'm gonna see if I can make myself co-host. I can't.
Yeah, that would be pretty fun.
Go to participants and click more. It should give you the option to make co-host.
Okay, I'm so sorry, everyone. Let's see. No, it just says make host. All right, it's okay. We'll just go ahead.
I'll survive.
Yeah, we'll be okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being patient while I bumbled around with that. Yeah, I know. As someone said, you would think 3 years of pandemic. You really would. But there's always something that goes wrong. So welcome everyone. I'm very glad to see you all back today. Hello, nice to meet you. If I didn't see you Tuesday, that was where we had our first class. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm very excited to get started with our second week of Aspie, or second day of Aspie Bootcamp. We're still in week 1. So just as a refresher, here are some of our class rules. During the class, please stay muted if you're not speaking. If you do want to speak for asking a question, please use the raise hand button in Zoom. And you can ask your question there and I'll call on you. Or you can type questions into the chat and Discord at any time. Also, I may ask you to use the Zoom icons like a thumbs up or like a red X or something to participate in class-wide polls. And your video is welcome to be on or off, whatever you are most comfortable with. Outside class, please ask me or the TAs questions or Jess via email or Discord. And also, if it's a question about class logistics, be sure to check the syllabus because your question might be answered there. And so anyway, we're going to have fun today. So thank you so much for showing up again. And as a reminder, I cannot see the chat while I'm sharing my screen, but I do have some wonderful assistants such as Jess and my great TAs that will be monitoring the chat and trying to get to your questions. So for today's class, you will need Replit. So go ahead and be sure to be logged into that because we will be using it. Okay, so I'm going to review what we went over on Tuesday just briefly. We talked about commands and working with the command line interface, the terminal, also known as the shell, And we learned how to give those commands to move files around, to make new file or new directories, and to navigate our computer. Okay, sorry. So we learned how to do all of these commands, but what if we wanted to give our computer more complicated instructions, save those instructions, or even write these instructions in a way that's a little more understandable to us than just all of these command line interface commands? And this is where programming comes in. So programming is using a structured language to give instructions to our computer, just like maybe you click around on your computer. This is just a way for us to type out those instructions and get our computer to do some interesting things. Today, we're going to focus mostly on math, but it's pretty fun. So these instructions are written to a file, and there's many different programming languages to choose from. And for this class, we're learning Python. It's in the name of the course. We're going to be using Replit, and this is what it'll look like after you log in. You're going to click on that blue Create REPL button to create a file. A REPL is just kind of what they're calling your coding file. And then it'll give you this other image here where you choose a template. When we choose our templates, we're going to type in Python and select that one because we're making Python code. And then you can give it a nice little title. It automatically generates one for you, which you can keep or make your own. And then you click Create. Just a review of how we did that. So before we get into the basics of Python, do we have any questions over what we've covered so far? And you can either put those questions in the chat or you can raise your hand. Okay, I see we've got some raised hands. Go ahead, Sterling.
Sure. I like my announcement. What's something about doing something about being smart of? I heard about something about good at reading. About this word on the paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Best of, don't know this word. I know of.
Basics of Python. That's the coding language we're going to use.
Python. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Awesome. Pammy.
Hi, so sorry. I just just to clarify, sorry, because I kind of missed that bit. So with Replit, we're going to choose the Python template. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. So sorry. Thank you very much.
No, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. And I'll go ahead and show that once more. So it'll look like you go to replit.com, and I do have that linked in the slides and the syllabus. It's going to look like this. And then in here, there's going to be, it might be blank at first, and then there's a little search bar. If you type in Python, it should pop up and look like this. So there might be a couple ones that say Python plus something else. You could just choose a basic one like this. And then you'll just hit create. And I will show you how to do that as well today because we'll be coding all together. Awesome. Great questions, everyone. Thank you. I love having people interact with me. Okay, so as I said, we're going to be learning Python. And how you write Python code is you write this inside of a Python file, which will have a .py or .py extension. So just like a text file has the .txt extension, or a Microsoft Word document has a .doc extension, Python files will always have this .py. So it might be main.py, myfile.py. That's how you know it's a Python file. It's how your computer knows it's a Python file. And usually you are coding inside an IDE, which is basically a software that recognizes the coding language you're using, kind of like Microsoft Word knows that you want to make documents, PowerPoint knows that you want to make slides. A Python IDE knows that you are going to be typing Python or writing Python code. So what makes Python code special? Well, the code is separated by spaces, such as, so any kind of space, a line, a tab, a single space, and it's kind of organized in this way that makes it easy to read. In this Python file, and I will show you this, so I'm going to describe it to you and then show you in our Replit. Just like words in a document are separated by line spaces and tabs, like you may have a paragraph that has a tab, different code chunks in Python will be separated by lines. So each line of code is one command. The next line of code will be another command. Next line of code is another command. And so Python uses these spaces to kind of tell which line of code it's going to be running, and how you have organized your code determines how it's going to run. And this will all make much more sense once I show you on Replit. And then when you run your code, so let's say you have a file, let's just imagine just some words in a file separated by lines. And then when you tell your computer to run this code, the computer executes those instructions that you've written from the Python file line by line. So we'll start line 1, you tell it to add 2 numbers together. It does that. Line 2, you tell it to print that number to the screen. It does that. Line 3, you give it a completely different number and just say, here is this number, assign it to this variable. It'll go line by line in order. So we call coding languages, we say that they have syntax, which is very similar to when we are speaking a language and we say it has syntax. This just means the way that you structure your words matters. And so all programming languages have this syntax. Python syntax specifically includes words or phrases that Python recognizes as commands. So just like when we were typing in the command line and we had, make directory or ls for list, our computer recognized those as commands. It didn't think that we were just typing random letters. It saw that pairing of letters that made, a word, and it said, oh, I know what this is. This means to do a specific thing, so I'm going to do that. So there's a lot of words in Python that it recognizes as commands, and that's how we're going to be building up our coding language. So for example, one that we'll look at today is the print statement. And this print, you type out print and then open parentheses, close parentheses. And this takes whatever is inside the parentheses. So you'll type something inside this parentheses. It will take whatever is inside the parentheses and print it to the console. So we'll see this for when we want to print, an answer to something or print out a message or something like that. So print is just one of those built-in words that Python recognizes as a command. So let's just go ahead and get started. I know I've been telling you a lot of words, but I find that most people really grasp it a lot easier when they type on their computer themselves and work alongside. So we're going to look at just some of the things that Python can already do that you don't even need to know special words for. So first, Python recognizes numbers and mathematical operations, just like a calculator. If you open your calculator, like if you have a physical calculator or you open your calculator on your phone, you type in numbers and you say like 4 minus 5, your calculator will print that answer. Python can do the same thing. It already knows basic math. So you're able to combine these numbers and symbols to perform mathematical operations. So for example, if we've said print and then 1 plus 3, Python knows this answer. It'll solve 1 plus 3 is 4, and then it'll print this to our screen. So let's see this in action here. So I already have my Replit open, and hopefully I set the sharing to where you can see, yes, you can see this. Okay, good. So go ahead and navigate to Replit, and I'm going to wait for everyone, don't worry. So create REPL, I'm going to search Python, and I'm just going to click on this first one here, it just says Python. I'm going to name it example. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name it example Python. And then I'm going to click this blue button for create. So in your reactions, everyone give me some sort of emoji, like a thumbs up. If you are here and you've already created your REPL, give me a thumbs up. Yeah, or a woohoo, a party popper thing. Awesome, we've got lots of people. I'll wait a couple more seconds for other people to create their REPLs, and please do put in the chat if you're having issues and a TA will get to you. Please do remember to stay muted just so we don't have extraneous noise.
Oh, it's example
Awesome.
Python.
And we can, all right, I think a lot of people, okay, so it looks like a lot of people have their thumbs up. Put up some sort of like red X. I think there's a red X. If you are having trouble, you're not able to do this yet, and a TA, or put it in the chat and a TA will get with you. I'm going to check the chat real quick to make sure. Oh, I've got lots of emojis in there. Okay, wonderful. Looks like we've all done it. Perfect, perfect. So I'm going to create my REPL. And you can see it is loading, but once it loads, it will have open for us a Python file called main.py, which we talked about before. So we have main.py, there's that .py extension. This is what Replit will create for you automatically. This depends on the software that you use. The reason I want us all to use Replit is because we'll all be on the same software using the same server or computer. So this website doesn't use your computer at all. It is just using Replit's computer. So it's kind of like you're borrowing someone else's computer to code on. And that just makes sure that we are all in the same environment. So I know that if you have a problem, it's either a problem with the Replit website or it's a problem with the code and we can fix it. Okay, so what we see here, we have main.py. We have this file that we can actually type into. So I've just typed some random stuff there. And then we also have, on the right-hand side, we have the console and the shell. So the shell is what we interacted with yesterday. And if I want to see what is in this directory that I'm in, what would be the command that I type into the shell to see what is inside this folder? Go ahead and put in the chat, what would I type in the shell to see what all is inside this directory with me? What command is that? Seeing some answers come in, go ahead and put in the chat, what command would I do to see what is in the directory with me? All right, and 3, 2, 1. All right, we got a lot of answers and I love it. Thank you so much for putting your answers in there. I really appreciate all of this participation. You guys are wonderful. So the correct answer here is we want to list all of the contents of the directory. So we want to type ls for list. So if you want to see what's in a directory, you want to list what's in the directory. So we're going to type ls. And if we type ls, make sure you're in the shell, not the console, the shell. We see that we have main.py, which is the file over here. We have, and some other ones. Now these you don't need to worry about. Replit automatically creates them, but you don't ever need to worry about these. I honestly don't know what all of them do. I think it's a lot, it's just a lot of formatting stuff. Just ignore those. The one we're going to work with is main.py. So that's on the left here. So like I said, Python will look at every line of code, every line in the file and run that sequentially. So our example over here, we had print 1 + 3, because we know that Python knows math. And so actually, I'm going to show you, if I do 1 + 3, I can do that. And then I could run. You can click this green button to run. I'm going to run that. And it runs. But how did we know it ran? We don't really. It's because we didn't tell Python to really print anything out. It just did something. It added 1 + 3. And it said, okay, I've added 1 + 3. But we didn't ask it for the answer. So I love Python. It's very literal like that, like some of us Aspies tend to be. So we want to give it, if we want it to print something to the console over here, the console, we give it a print statement. So in this case, we say print, open parentheses, close parentheses. And as soon as you start that open parentheses, Replit will automatically know that you need a closing one so that you don't forget it. And we're going to print 1 + 3. All right, and now I'm going to click that run button and see what happens. It printed it, 4, yay. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up or some emoji if you were able to use this print statement and then get it to print on the console by pressing this green run button. Yes, yes, all of the emojis. Amazing, so congrats. You just ran a Python program. You are geniuses. So that is how, in a basic way, we're going to be writing our Python files. We're going to be typing code on this left-hand tab, pressing the green run button, and then seeing it appear over here. So great job. Okay, so back to the slideshow. So we tried print 1 + 3. But you can also do some other operations. So I want you all to take a couple minutes and let's try these out. So sorry, I just shared again, but we're going to try these other operations. So just like you can type, minus, you can type star for multiplication. The slash is division. Does anyone have any idea what star star might be? Any guesses on what star star might be?
Isn't that power to or power of or something of that nature?
Yeah, exactly. It's an exponent. Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of people put square root in there, which is you can do square roots using this. I'll show you how, kind of by a clever way. But yeah, thank you so much for everyone that's putting in their guesses. Yeah, it's exponents. So we can use star star for exponents. So let's go ahead and try some of these out. So I'm going to say, let's see. So I'm going to say print 5 minus 3. And if I do that, I'm going to click the run button and 2. So this dash here, it's just your normal dash. That's subtraction. We saw the plus sign for addition, minus sign for subtraction. You know, makes sense. The star is for multiplication. So the star right above your 8 key, if I run this, you can also do Control Enter on your keyboard to run it instead of going over here and pressing the green button. So now, yep, there we go, printed that for us. Now let's see something. Okay, so let's do division and let's see what it does, how it handles different divisions. So let's say 10 divided by 5. That should be a nice even 2. So let's say 10 divided by 5. There we go, 2. Now, an interesting thing about Python is it will, with division, usually convert that to a decimal point, just because sometimes with division, you won't get a whole number. So that's kind of just goes back to how computers perform division, which is out of the scope of this class. But in this case, it gives 2.0 instead of just 2. Now let's see what happens if it does like 10 divided by 3, which will not be a nice whole number. I'm going to run that, and I'm pressing Control Enter to run. Same as clicking the green button, and now we get 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and it kind of rounds up to 5 over here. This is again just has to do with the way that computers perform math. Okay, so we've done a couple of maths. Oh, we didn't do the exponent one, so I'll show you how that works. So let's do 2 star star 2. So this represents 2 to the second power, or 2 squared. So if we do that, answer should be 4. And we can just put whatever power number we want here. So if we want 2 to the 4th power, we do 2 star star 4, 16. Perfect. Now, what if we want to do a square root? Well, a square root is the same as raising something to the 0.5 power. Whoa, blowing some people's minds. 2 to the 0.5 is going to be the square root of 2. And there we go. There's the square root of 2. And just to prove it to you, because you probably know what the square root of 4 is, that should be 2. And let's see if Python can do this. So the square root of 4 is 2. So great. So you already know some Python, just automatically. By working with a calculator, you know how to type in some of these Python operations. Good for you. So let's go ahead to this next slide, which is order of operations. So just like your calculator does, and just like you do when you're doing math on paper, Python follows an order of operations, or PEMDAS. People have a bunch of different ways of there are different acronyms. Some people say, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Maybe you have a favorite one from your math class. But this order of operations determines, what math happens in what order if you have a bunch of, mathematical operations all at once. So it will follow this order of parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. And so the first one it will always do is parentheses. That's the very first calculation it will do. So one thing that's important is if you you want one calculation to be the very first one it performs, put that one in parentheses, and then it will be the first one. Parentheses help. So let's try this first one here. Let's see if I can just copy and paste it. So we're going to print 5 times, in parentheses 4 minus 2, in parentheses plus 1. And don't forget, we have a lot of parentheses going on here. Don't forget your ending parentheses and your beginning parentheses just for this print statement, because it needs that to run. Oops. Accidentally had an extra print. Okay, so now let's go ahead and run this. All right, we get 11 for this one. And then if we did this other one, don't move the slide. So if I print this other one, will this, oops, sorry, I'm just moving my whole screen around. I don't even know what this is. So if we print this other one, then will those two be different? Let's find out. So I'm going to run it. There we go. So here's another interesting thing. We have two different print statements, and Python is going to execute those one after the other, right? So it starts with this first one, and it says 11. It prints that to the console. Then it sees this next one, and the answer is 19. And so it's going to print that one to the console. So it's going to do it one by one on a new line in the console as well. There are some ways to get around this automatically adding a new line in the console, but we're not going to talk about that right now. And I'm going to try to get rid of all of these Zoom pop-ups and then also this weird thing that just, what is this? Okay. Getting situated. Thank you everyone for being patient with me. So what did we notice about this? Well, we saw that Python is following the order of operations, just like we did in school. And another cool thing to notice is that if you notice there's some spaces in between, our operations and our numbers, and that's perfectly fine. Python says that is all right. I know what you mean when you type 1 + 1 with no spaces. And I know what you mean when you type 1 space plus space 1. That's totally fine with Python math. Don't get too crazy with the spaces because then it might get confused. But at least with math, Python is fine with however you space this, as long as you don't start a line with a space. If I start a line with a space and then say 1 + 1, Python is probably going to give me an error. Let's see. Yes. If you start a line with a space, Python will get mad. And we'll go over why in a bit. So here we have our order of operations. So go ahead and play around with that if you like. And then we already did this next slide too, where you can print multiple lines by using print statements one after the other. So if I grab something like this, so go ahead and get this or type it in yourself, and someone or everyone try to run this and then tell me what happens when you run this code. So go ahead, we have print 345. There's not even any math in this one. We just said print this number. This other one is print 10 divided by 5, and then 3 × 3 × 5. What do you think is going to run, and then what runs? What actually happens in the console over on the right-hand side? Go ahead and put in the chat. Yeah, people are saying we learned that I don't have a reading list. Yeah, I do enjoy reading. I just don't log it on my Brave browser. I'm not completely illiterate though. Yeah, so if we print all of these, what is going to happen? So if I run this, what is going to happen in our console? List each answer. See 345. Yep, so that's some of the, yeah. Thank you everyone for putting in your answers. So if I run this code, tell me what you think will happen or what does happen. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you being super active in the chat. It really makes it more entertaining for me. Yeah, some people were saying that Firefox, Replit wasn't working in Firefox. So be aware of that if for some reason your Replit isn't working. Yep. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. So when we have all these print statements, let's go ahead and run, see what it does. Yeah, it's going to print every single one of these. So it's going to print 345. And then on the next line, it's going to print 2.0. And then on the next line, it's going to print 45. So we have all of these print statements. It's going to do each one in the order that it is in the file. So great job. We've been working with some operations. We've learned how to do some math. And we've learned that you guys already know some Python code just by knowing math. So I'm going to pause here and ask if anyone has any questions on what we've just covered just now with Python and operations. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question or put in the chat. Yes, Sterling.
Yes, I like to say something about Python.
Okay.
So what is it about Python? Please.
What is Python?
Do you have a question?
Sure. I think I know something special about Python.
What do you know about Python?
But I'm learning about something about Python.
Oh, you're learning about Python. Good.
Yes.
Perfect. Let's see, Giuseppe, do you have a question?
No, I don't have a question, but I want to say I'm getting the hang of it.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. That is amazing.
Thank you.
All right, Maria.
Hi, I'm Maria. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And I just wanted to clarify because I noticed when trying to do the square root that at first it wasn't working, that it has to be like 0.5 and not just 0.5.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you said that because I just didn't even mention that. Thank you so much. So yes, if we want to do decimals in Python, this is where it's a little bit different than maybe your calculator works. Thank you, Maria, for pointing that out. You can't just start with a point. Python doesn't like that. It wants to be very explicit. It wants you to say 0.5. So if we want to print the square root of 100, we could say 100 ***, which is our exponent, and then we're going to say 0.5. So not 0.5, 0.5. So always start your decimals with the 0, unless of course it's, 4.5, and then that's fine. But you always have to start it with some number. So if it's 0 point something, you need to start with that 0. Thank you. I forgot to mention that. Okay, yeah, so some people are having some Replit issues. It could be internet. Yeah, it could also just be using up Zoom internet bandwidth and stuff. Yes, Python wants perfect grammar. You are right. Oh yeah, and just put in a great tip as well in the chat if you want to do square root another way. But yeah, so someone put Python wants perfect grammar, and that is exactly right. When you're coding, you need to make sure that your statements are correct and you don't have any typos. Most of the time when people get frustrated with coding, it's because they accidentally did something like this. They left off that end parentheses. And when you just look at it, you're a human and you can read that and say, oh yeah, that should be fine. But if we try to run this, Python is so mad at me. It says syntax error, parentheses, was never closed. So the good thing about Python is it usually tells us what is wrong and what's making it upset. But you do have to make sure that you're very precise in what you're typing.
And what could that be?
And just like what I showed with, if I accidentally leave off this end parentheses, and then I try to run that, then Python will have an error and it'll say parentheses was never closed. So you just have to make sure that you're watching for little things like that. And yeah, so let's see. So to do roots, do you have to work out the reciprocal first? No, to do roots, you can just do it like this, where 100 exponent to the 0.5, and that's how you can do a square root. Awesome, thank you so much, everyone. So we'll go ahead and move on. So we've looked at some numbers. We've looked at working with numbers and showing how we can use Python like a calculator. But what if we want to print text? Does anyone have any ideas? What would we do you think, if we want to print text? And you can put it in the chat if you want, or just think about it. Yeah, so we've got some guesses, and these are all, yeah, they're really good guesses. Yes, I'm seeing so many great answers. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, so if we want to print text, it's a little bit different, and we're going to talk about how to print text. But first, let's talk about why it's a bit different. It is data types. And yes, so the correct answer, just so I don't leave people hanging, if we want to print text, we're going to put this in quotes. So I'm going to print hello in quotes, and it will print hello. All text needs to be in quotes. Why is that? Well, this is because of data types. So I'm going to go into slideshow mode. So Python recognizes different data types, which just means it recognizes different types of values associated with different operations. So this will differ based on programming language. So we're just going to learn how Python recognizes data types. And by data, I mean anything that you're typing into your Python script that you're trying to do operations on. So when we had numbers, we had integers and we had decimals, or also known as floats. And then when we have text, we're going to be working with something called strings. There's a bunch of there's 4 main data types in Python that we'll be working with in this class. Int, float, string or str, and bool. Now the last 2, or some of these words just may be weird to you, and that's okay. Int just stands for integer, and this is a whole number. It's like 500, 10, 2, just a whole number, no decimal. A float stands for floating point number. And this goes back to how computers store decimals. They store it as what's called a floating point number, just because computers have a special way of storing where a decimal would be. We don't have to get into all of that, but all you have to know, float means a decimal number. So 4.8, 5.2, 0.0007. All of these are floats. And so these are our 2 kinds of numbers. We have ints, whole numbers, or floats, decimals. What about a fraction? Well, if you type out a fraction like 5/4, that's really an operation, right? That's 5 divided by 4 in Python. So it's not really a fraction. So there's no fractions in Python. If you hated fractions, you can rejoice, because we only are dealing with whole numbers and decimals, because fractions divide out to whole 2 decimals. And now when we want to deal with words, they're called strings. This is a string, just means a series of characters inside quotes. These can be single quotes or double quotes, but make sure that you're consistent with which ones you're using. I typically just do double quotes just to be safe. And then I'll show you why, as we progress in the course, it becomes relevant when we do a deep dive into strings. So str stands for string. And then bool, or boolean, is a pretty funny word, and it just means true or false. You may have heard about computers using binary, which is 0s or 1s, where 0 is false and 1 is true. This is a boolean. It's true or it's false. And we will see how to use these statements. They don't come up all of the time, but they are pretty common. And so it may not make too much sense to you to have something representing true and false, but it's really powerful in programming to represent true and false. And actually, this is just how you type it out. You don't put any quotes, because if you had quotes, it would be a string. You just type capital T, true, and capital F, false. And I'll show you how we're going to use all of these in a bit. So types are really important. It may just seem like an arbitrary distinction, but each data type has specific operations that it's allowed to do. For example, you can't multiply 2 strings together. You can't say hello times cat. That doesn't make any sense. You can't say 4.8 divided by Miranda in quotes. That doesn't make any sense. And so Python distinguishes all of these data types so that we know, and it knows, how to structure this information and how to deal with it. So if it gets like, a string divided by a number, it's going to give you an error because it says it can't do this. It does not know how to do that. Awesome. So do we have any questions about these data types before we talk about strings? Can plus be used for cross-type concatenation in Python? I just saw this one come up. So that is no, it cannot. Addition has to be among the same types. So you can add 2 strings, and that is just concatenating the second string to the first string, but you cannot add like 5 plus hello. And if you didn't understand what I just said, that is perfectly fine. I was just answering a question that I saw in the chat. So let's see. I don't see any raised hands so far. So please do raise your hand if you do have a question. Otherwise, we're going to talk about strings. Oh, Sterling, yes.
I know I had to raise my hand.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I thought you had a question. Okay, great. Giuseppe, yes. Oh, nope. Oh, yes.
So I do know that integer is a whole number that is not a fraction.
Yes. Perfect. Awesome. I'm really glad you guys are getting this. And if you're not, perfectly fine. All of these classes are recorded and you can go back and listen to my wonderful voice over and over again. Okay, so let's talk about strings. So Python interprets strings in quotes as literal text, not code. So whatever you type in quotes, like if you typed quote print, it's not going to see that as a print statement. It's going to see that as the word print. So, but of course we're dealing with print statements here. So this is print, that recognized command by Python. And in quotes, we put hello. That's how you tell it. I just want you to print this string hello. I'm not giving you a command named hello. I'm giving you the word hello. So print hello. And so let's go ahead and try this out. Try printing some strings. So in your Replit Python file, try print in quotes hello or whatever you would like. But then what happens if you try to add some spaces? What if you do print quote space hello space? And then we're even going to see what happens if you try to print hello without any quotes around it. So as you try this, go ahead and tell me what your results are. And I will wait a couple seconds and then try it. Oh, we already did this first one. Oh, well, I'm going to say hello. My name is Miranda to make it a bit more complicated. So you can have, you know, a lot in here as long as it's surrounded by quotes. So go ahead and tell me, you know, we've seen this. What's going to happen? It is going to print whatever I've put in here inside quotes. Hello, my name is Miranda. So now let's try adding in some spaces. So if, let's just say I'm going to do 2 spaces here and say hello, and then 3 spaces afterwards. Make sure you have this closing quotation and your closing parentheses. Awesome, I'm glad to see what all you've put in there. And then if I print this, I run this, and it prints hello. Again, it has added these spaces. You can't really see them though from the console. Let's try to compare that. So I'm going to have print hello with the spaces and then print hello without the spaces. Let's see. There we go. So now we can kind of see how it offsets that. Yeah, so Python does count these spaces as something that you've typed. And so if we do something like this, and then run that again, hello is all the way over here now, it's moved. So Python does recognize all of these spaces. It recognizes most anything that you're going to put inside quotes, except for more quotes. So just to, so you don't run into this later, if you try to print hello, but in double quotes again, Python will be unhappy. Let's see, how many are there? Oh, there's oh, actually it figured out how to deal with this one, but I wouldn't do that. If you want quotes inside of quotes, you can do single quotes inside of the double quotes and it will print that for you. So see, I put these single quotes inside of the double quotes and it recognized that and printed the quotes for me. Awesome, I'm seeing some questions and then people answering questions. Thank you so much. So that's how we do strings. Oh, and we didn't try this one. So what happens if you just print hello with no quotes around it? So it's not a string. Print hello. Let's see what happens here. Oh, it has an error. Let's see what our error says. It says name error. Name hello is not defined. And so this is just saying, hey, you didn't put this in quotes, so I'm interpreting it as a command. And I don't know the command hello. I don't know the command who's named hello. So I don't know what to do here. So instead, we need to make sure that with our print statements printing strings, we put those in quotation marks. Very important. Okay, great. So now we're getting to someone else's question of, you know, can you combine a string and an integer in some operations? It mostly does not work. There are some cases which we'll talk about when we talk about strings where you can do some operations, but for our purposes in this class right now, you can't really do this. So what happens if you try to add a string to an int or to a float? Does someone want to try that for me? try adding print like 5 plus a word and tell me what happens. Does it work? Does it give us an error? Yeah, someone said type error. Yeah, so it's going to say type error because the types, the data types don't match up, and it's going to say I can't combine two different types. So some operations are not compatible with two values of different types. And that's important to remember so that you don't say 3 plus hello, and it's not going to say 3 hello. It's just going to say, I don't know how to do this. But what is something around this? What if I want to print the number 3 and then the word hello? How would I do that? Does anyone have any guesses for how I could print the number 3 and the word hello together? Looking at the chat. Yes, yes, yes. Lots of good answers. Amazing. Yeah. So you can actually put that number 3 into quotes and it is recognized as a string. So we said earlier that when we put things in quotes, Python recognizes that it as a string. So if we say 3 hello, now we can. There we go. Someone else was talking about str3. So this is a special way of changing the data type of something. So if we put something in between the parentheses for the function str, that's a recognized command by Python, and it will turn this number into a string. Don't worry about that right now. We will get to that later, but I did see some people were jumping ahead a bit, which is totally fine. But yeah, so you're able to print something like you can print 3 as a string in quotes, or you can print 3 as a number, but you cannot print 3 hello. So see, it printed both of those, but we can't print like 3 hello. That will not work. Syntax error. So see, Python does not like that. And similarly, you can't divide hello by 5. And as I said, we're going to dive deeper into some of these special operations for strings in a later class, where we'll see how we can make a string larger, combine 2 different strings, but we're not doing that today. Awesome. So now we've been typing all of these operations in. We've said, 1 plus 5, we've said hello in quotes, and we put those all into print statements. And this is fun, it's nice, but we're kind of just typing the same information each time. Every time we want to run a print statement. And if we want to change that information that's inside the print statement, we have to go back and change it manually, type around, and get it to change the value. So if I have, a really long equation inside there, or an operation, so like 5 plus 10 divided by 3 raised to the power of 4, all of this stuff, and I want to change 2 of those numbers, I'm going to have to go back and change all of those numbers manually myself inside the print statement, which can get a little hectic. So yeah, what if we need to add a lot of those numbers? And also, what if we want to save some information and use it later? We talked about programming because when we're typing in commands, we're having to type a lot and do a lot of things manually. But what if we want to save that information? What if we want to save a number 5 that represents, a number of apples that we have in a fictional world about apples? So what if we want to save that? Well, in this case, we're going to use something called variables. You may recognize the word variables from algebra class, where we have, like a equals 2. And that is a very similar way of thinking about how Python does variables. It assigns a name to a value. And then whenever you reference that name, it knows that you are referencing the value. So let's see how we can do this. So to start up a variable, my slides froze. I think my entire Zoom froze. Here we go. All right, I'm back. Hello, everyone. I don't know if I froze just then. Am I back now?
Never left.
Oh, I never left. Oh, okay. Just kidding. My whole screen froze. Anyway, let's talk about variables. they allow you to assign a value to a name. So you're going to use what's called the assignment operator. Now, you may look at this and you say, I know what that is. That's an equal sign. No, don't call it an equal sign. I mean, you can call it an equal sign, but we call it the assignment operator because we're assigning the name of the variable to that value there. And Python will recognize the variable name as the value that you assigned it. So in your replit, go ahead and try a equals 2. And then just say print A. Notice that A is not in quotes because we're not printing a string. We are printing the value of the variable A. So go ahead and try A equals 2, print A. And I will try this as well. All right. So we're going to say A equal 2. And then print, oops, print, be sure you spell print correctly. I'm just going to say print A. Now, notice that capitalization does matter. So if you had capital A, you need to print capital A. If you have lowercase a, you print lowercase a. So I'm going to run this, and it prints 2 because we've assigned A as the value of 2. So we can make as many variables as we want. Let's say we want a variable named B, and we're going to set that equal to 10. So now what's going to happen when I run this? What do you think? What is going to print when I run this code here? Yeah, I'm seeing some answers come in. Yes, you're right. Oh, you didn't fall for my trick. You did not fall for my trick. Or maybe you did, and that's okay. But yeah, so if we run this, it's still going to be 2. And that's because we've assigned this variable B, but we didn't do anything with it. So instead, I'm going to say print B. Now it'll print our B variable. So you can have, you know, whatever you want in these variables, and they don't have to be numbers either. Let's say we want a variable named D, and we call it hello or something. And so then in this case, we can say print D, and it will print hello. So something like that. And so I've chosen some pretty boring names and some pretty not descriptive names. Like if you were reading this code, you don't know what A stands for, you don't know what B stands for. And so for this reason, we sometimes say that we want to write readable code, and we will type out our variables to give it a descriptive name. So let's say that I want to say I have 2 cats, and I want to have a variable that's called num cats. And by this, I mean number of cats. So I'm going to have a variable called num cats, so that when you look at it, you can look at it and say, oh, this value represents the number of cats that Miranda has. And I'm going to say that equals 2. And now we print, make sure to type in exactly the variable name, num cats. And notice I put this underscore here. This is called, there's a bunch of different, it's called casing. And that is because you want it to, you want to separate these 2 words. So you can't use a space because then Python thinks those are 2 different words. So you have to separate them with an underscore. So now if I run this, it's going to print that variable that I just assigned it. Pretty neat. So a couple of things about variables before we wrap up. So yeah, you can say something like my name equals, and then in quotes, Miranda. And you assign this using the variable operator or the assignment operator. And that's kind of what it looks like in code. And this is just what it looks like when I type it into PowerPoint. Some things about, quick things about variable names. I know I like rules. I know a lot of us like rules. So something to keep in mind with variable names, they have to start with a letter. They cannot start with a number or a dash or anything. They can start with an underscore, but that's for a special case that we're not going to talk about. So must start with a letter. They must contain only, the names of the variables must contain only letters, numbers, or an underscore. So you can't name it like my variable exclamation point. That will not work. It's also case sensitive. So capital AGE is different from lowercase AGE. Those would be saved as 2 different places in Python. And it can't be a Python keyword. So what do I mean by Python keyword? Well, I kind of mean, you know, how we have those built-in commands from Python, like print. You can't name a variable print because then you would be telling Python to erase whatever it had saved as print. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's how you can think about it. And if you want to see a list of Python keywords, you can look at this here. you don't have to memorize all of these, but I just wanted to show you. Python has a lot of words that it recognizes. You have and, you have as, you have break, you have def. And we're going to talk about a lot of these keywords as the class goes on, but you just want to make sure you're not naming your keywords like false, because then that would, it wouldn't work. So some example variable names that I have here, a_number, num1, my_string. So these are some example variable names. When in doubt, just use letters and underscores. That's typically what I do. And I try to give my variable name something that's descriptive of what they are. Okay, so now we moved on to this assignment, and we only have a couple of minutes before class is over. So if you would like to work on this outside of class, you are welcome to. Please reach out to me or the TAs or Jess if you have questions about it. But if people are really struggling, we'll also at the beginning, even if people aren't struggling, at the beginning of next week, whenever I give an assignment, at the beginning of the next class, I will go over how I would solve the assignment so that you will see the answer and you see me work it out. So don't stress about it if you don't get it. I will tell you how I would do it. So go ahead and read over this assignment. I'm going to go over it and then you can ask me questions about it at the end. So first, I want you to write Python code that prints the grade for a quiz in which a student received 19 out of 20 questions correct. So this is fictional, and I'm just telling you that there's a grade for a quiz where a student received 19 out of 20 questions correct. And here I've got some little things about your code, what it should contain to get you on the right track. So first, your code should have a variable named number correct, which is assigned to the value 19. This is the number of questions a student answered correct. Next, you need to have a variable named total questions, which is assigned to the value 20. This just represents the total number of questions on the quiz. And then you need a variable score, which is equal to number correct divided by total questions. So it's just like if you're doing this math on your calculator, where you say number correct divided by total questions is going to be your score for the quiz. But I want you to do this using variables. So I want you to assign a variable named number correct, a variable named total questions, and a variable named score. And then at the very end, I want you to print out the value of the variable score. And I have, a little extra thing down here if you just like to do extra stuff. So I see we've got, just a couple of minutes left in class. Do I have any questions? Yes, Maddie.
How exactly do I show you the work I did?
So you can send it to me if you want to, but I don't typically take up the work because that tends to stress people out. So I don't want people to get stressed out by turning it in or something. If you want me to look over it, you're welcome to send it to me via email or Discord.
Okay.
But you don't have to.
I kind of just did extra because I thought it looked kind of weird to say, that the score is less than 1. So I in the end, I multiplied it by 100 and added a percent symbol.
Amazing. That's actually really great. I love that you thought of that. That's really cool. Okay, cool. Yeah. So some people, and some people are saying it didn't take them super long. And that is perfectly fine. But just remember that, other people are completely new to coding and it may take them longer. So we are all for everyone taking this at their own pace. So I'm really glad for you though, if you were able to already do it. All right. So, someone asked a good question. So, okay, well, I'll go ahead and wrap up. And if you have extra questions, you can stay after. But just to wrap up, we've covered, just sort of our basics of Python, how we're going to use operations in Python, and kind of started making our first Python code. So congrats, everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening. We will be posting this recording as always, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.